Games are special. Playing games or learning to play is like one of the very first things we do when we grow up. So this is a picture of Connor, who's going to be doing a talk on our JavaScript SDK a little bit later. I took one of my fiancée out. She was like, no, how are you doing? But this is true, right? I mean, like, think about it. Like, you get toys, right? The first thing you do when you're like 1, 2 years old is get toys. And learning to play and play games is not something we forget. This is our Lego wall at our headquarters in Menlo Park. That's a lot of time and effort has gone into that. Like, Nyan Cat alone, I think, was like 3 weeks. Should really have been building products. But the point is, as we grow old, as we get up, we never lose this sense of play, right? And games themselves, they're special because they are naturally social. Like, we play games on our own, but we really love playing games with people. And this is one of our games night, our board game nights that we have at Facebook London every month. This is genuinely what we do on a Thursday night. We just sit around and we hang out, we drink beer, and we play games. So there's something we learn when we're young. We never stop playing them, and they're naturally social. So when you think about the most personal device that you own, right, your phone, it makes sense that playing games is something that you do with your phone. So actually, if you look at time spent on mobile, half of it, 50%, is spent in the browser, doing tasks, like watching TV, reading the news, that kind of stuff. But the single biggest task, time category of thing we spend doing on our phones is playing games. 32% of time on our mobile devices is spent playing games. But what's the remaining 18%? It's Facebook. So Facebook plus games makes up half of all time spent on mobile. So games are something you learn when you're young. They're something that's naturally social. There's something you spend a huge amount of time on your mobile device. And then there's Facebook, which is the social platform. So there's something symbiotic going on here, and we'll talk about that in a bit. So not only is it 32% of the time you spend on your mobile device, it's a big business, as Doug alluded to, right? If you look at the top 400 grossing iOS apps in the US, 72% of them are games. And in Google Play, it's 78%. So it's a big business, which is why many game developers are here today. But it's super competitive. How many games, on average, in March, do you think were added to the iOS App Store per day? Any guesses? Go on, shout them out. Come on. 5,000. 5,000 a day? Oh, that's kind of made my number look a little small. But we'll go with it anyway. I used Anvil and everything, right? Boom. Kind of didn't work out how I was expecting it to. But in all seriousness, that is a big number. That's a day. Every day, every year, every week, every month. 143 games added to the Apple App Store. So you're up against a lot of competition. And what Doug was talking about earlier is that Facebook can help. So of course Facebook can help. Games are social, Facebook is social. Games are mobile, Facebook is mobile. You know, we reached this incredible milestone, this incredible humbling milestone last year of 1 billion users. But 680 million of them are on mobile devices every month. And the thing is, they're gamers. We have 250 million people playing Facebook-connected games every single month. So Doug talked about how many of the top apps are enabled with Facebook. But when we look at the top app games enabled with Facebook, it's even more compelling. 82 of the top 100 US iOS games, top grossing iOS games, are integrated with Facebook. And 75 of the top 100 Android grossing games are implemented with Facebook. So we can help, and here's how. We want to talk about discovery, how Facebook is making games discoverable. We want to talk about engagement, how you get your users to share their activity, which drives users back to your app. And we want to talk about something that Facebook itself can help with almost more than any other platform, cross-platform. Let's start with discovery. So Doug talked about App Center, and being in App Center is additive to you being in Google Play and the App Store. But App Center is a little different. It's less driven by top 100, top 20, top 400 apps. It's a social app store. Much of the ranking is based on what your friends are playing. And that introduces an interesting property. What it shows you is that the slope curve is much less steep than it is in the Apple App Store and Google Play. Which, as you building a new game and growing a new game, means that as you want to build up the rankings, App Center becomes an increasingly important channel for you. And that's because it's an app store built on social. And even App Center on the web is helping driving mobile installs, right? Just the fact that you're listed in App Center on the web means that you have a Send to Mobile button. I love this. It's such a magical experience for the first time. You tap it, guess what? You get a push notification, guess what? You tap on that, and you're going to end up at Google Play or the Apple App Store to download and install that game. And of course, we've made it work on Facebook Home as well. So that's how App Center can help. But the other thing Doug talked about is these 3 pillars of timeline: newsfeed, timeline, and search. So hopefully you guys have been into the Apple App Store today and updated your Facebook app, because there is some good new stuff in there for games. Newsfeed is such an important channel for discovery, and games are such an important vertical, that we've built Games Feed. Newsfeed for games. So you just scroll to the top, tap Games, and now I have a newsfeed of all of the activity from my friends in all of the Facebook-connected games that they're playing on iOS, Android, and the web. What's cool about this, right, is not only is it showing me like activity from my friends, the pulse of what they're doing, but I'm also discovering more detail about the game they're playing. It's not just an icon and a name anymore. I'm seeing that Slavic is playing games on chess. I know he's playing chess games. Newsfeed is such an important channel, but getting in there requires you to have users publishing activity from your app. Now, there are a couple of cases where that isn't necessarily easy. The first is if you happen to have an app, not necessarily games, basically any game can be made to be social, but if you have another kind of app, maybe a financial app or something to do with healthcare, the activity in those apps isn't necessarily shareable, right? Isn't necessarily social. The other thing is you've just launched. You're brand new. And right now, you don't have a critical mass of users sharing activity that allows you to grow through these purely organic channels, which is why mobile app install ads is such a great product. It allows you to kickstart your game's reach and get that critical mass of users sharing activity. So I'm not going to talk about it too much today, but one of the sessions this afternoon is going to focus on this and lead you through, in a browser like today, how to get set up with this product and how easy it is. 20% of the top 100 grossing apps are using it already. Next, timeline. Rose talked about timeline and how important and central it is to a user's identity. And the games I play are important to me, which is why there is now a games collection on timeline. I just swipe to the right, find the games collection, and now I'm on Gareth's timeline seeing the recent games he's playing. So I can scroll through these and see which games he loves to play. And guess what? If I tap on top 11, where am I going to end up? At the Apple App Store or Google Play. And if I have the app installed, then guess what? The game gets a re-engaged user. Next, I want to talk about search. Being a mobile app and integrating Facebook login means you're eligible to appear in Facebook's search on mobile. It's a pretty simple thing, but it works extremely well. Candy Crush Saga, there it is. Tap on it, and the same thing happens again. Off I go to Google Play or the Apple App Store. But Graph Search, as Doug talked about, really helps on the web as well. Not just the apps that my friends are using, but I can find the games that my friends who live in New York are playing. So this is a badass query. And the cool thing about this is scroll down. It's a big, long list. And see how many of those have that magic send to mobile button as well. Graph Search on the web, powering discovery for games on iOS and Android. And Doug talked about this number, but I just want to talk about it again because it amazes me every time I see it. All those things combined mean that we send 263 million people. So we send people into the App Store and Google Play 263 million times in the last month. So now let's talk about engagement and how you actually get this stuff going. And it's all about these social channels, these social engagement channels that Facebook offers. Share, requests and invites, scores and achievements, and Open Graph. Now, what I'm about to talk about next is used by many games, but they're not just applicable to games. They're applicable to any app that wants to implement gamification-type features. But the gateway to all of these is Facebook login. But that might feel like a barrier. You've spent all this time and energy acquiring this user through whatever channel, cross-promotion, ads, a bunch of other channels. So they get to your game, and then you ask them to log in with Facebook, right? Why aren't they just playing the game? Why put this extra barrier in front of them? Well, don't take our word for it. Developers tell us time and time again that users who log in with Facebook are just more valuable. This is Ludia, the studio behind Jurassic Park Builder and Family Feud and Friends. 63% of their users log in with Facebook, but that drives 70% of their revenue. Wooga, who are the makers behind basically my favorite casual game, to which I'm pretty much addicted, is Diamond Dash. These guys have 70% of their users log in with Facebook, and those users are 9 times more likely than non-Facebook-enabled users to pay in their game. And then finally, Nordeus, the studio behind a top 11 football manager. Sorry, for a second I forgot where I was. Top 11 soccer manager. So these guys, 80% of their users log in with Facebook, and those 80% drive 90% of all their revenues. And it turns out that those Facebook-connected users have a higher average revenue per user, 12 to 15 times versus non-Facebook-enabled users. So users who log in with Facebook just are more valuable, and they're more valuable for 2 reasons. Number one, they're having a social experience, which is just more engaging. And I'll talk about how it's more engaging in a minute. But also, they're sharing activity back to Facebook, which is driving more users back to that app. So for you guys, they're just more valuable. Even so, we want to make it easier to have people sharing. And what Eddie talked about and what we're launching today is the fact that now you can have people sharing rich, engaging, structured stories from your app without necessarily having the user to log in. So instead of talking about these specific features, my colleague Prashant is going to give a talk this afternoon upstairs about how to implement these things. I want to talk about the scenarios that you as a game or app developer can use to implement these features in the right way. And the simplest and the first is bragging. When you play games, when you beat the end-of-level baddie and when you just generally get a kick-ass score, that is something often you want to share. And as game developers and as app developers, it's about finding those natural moments to share and giving the users a really simple opportunity to do so. So this is my friend Gareth playing Diamond Dash, and he totally kicked Ali Parr's ass at this game. Turns out I've actually got a slightly higher score than that. I should really have used that screenshot, but we'll let Gareth have some credit. And guess what? There's an opportunity to share. This is using the old iOS share sheet. As of today, you could replace that with the brand new native share dialog. But publishing the score as text, as unstructured data, is good, right? It's good. But you can do better. So our platform supports the concept of achievements. And the way these work is that you go and tell Facebook what your achievements are. You enumerate them, what they are, as Open Graph objects. And you give them a score which tells Facebook how important each of them is relative to each other. And that helps us understand how to surface these and rank these in newsfeed and on timeline. But what it means is when I earn an achievement in your game, now with the native share dialog, you can publish that as a structured story. Not just, woohoo, I beat you. Simon earned an achievement in this game, and I can add my message to that as well. So achievements is super powerful, and they're common to many, many games, and could be common to non-games as well. Think about a fitness app, right? The fact that I did my first run in less than 5K in 5 minutes. A minute in 5K? Whatever. That is an achievement, right? But it's not a game. Still applicable. But even if achievements doesn't work, you can use Open Graph to tell even more engaging stories. So these are some examples. Gareth entered a tournament in Diamond Dash. Phil Hewinson finished 4 levels in Stormfall Age of War. Gareth played a great round in Diamond Dash. And Aman completed a level in Candy Crush Saga. You can use Open Graph to tell the story of what people are doing in your app. Lastly, I beat 8 people on Friend Smash. Yes. So next, I want to talk about inviting friends. This is one of the most common use cases, but it's something worth talking about because it's something you can optimize really closely. Hopefully, you'll have seen this before. This is our standard Facebook requests dialog. It has a list of suggested friends, and I can pick many of them, and I can send those requests to the recipients who get a push notification, which brings them back to the app or sends them to Google Play. But there's a bunch of optimizations you can do to make this a really powerful experience. This is real data from a couple of top platform apps, anonymized, of course. So why is Game B so much better than Game A? It's because they focused on a quality invite and gifting sending experience. So here's an example. I'll just point out that this app was not one of those two. So anonymized, and then here it is. No, different app. Here's the experience, right? I want to invite some friends, but this time they've built a custom friend selector. There's 2 cool things about this. Number 1, it's built within the UI of the game, so I don't feel like I've left yet. So I kind of feel safe and feel like it's part of the overall experience. But the other thing is that I can now filter that to the most appropriate people to whom I should send these requests, these invites. And there's a couple of ways that you can do that. The first is the obvious one, right? Pick friends who don't play the game. And we have an SQL query that allows you to query for this user's friends who don't play the game, and you can pre-populate that with those. But here's something that you can do that not a lot of people know. We have an API that allows you to get all of the user's friends and the platforms that they use Facebook on. So for my 500 friends, say, you can find out which of those friends use Facebook on iOS, which of those friends use Facebook on iPad, and which of those use it on Android. Which means if you're an iOS-only game, you don't want to waste real estate and request sends on people who can't play your game because they don't have that device. Totally insane. So instead, we have an SQL query that allows you to get the subset of my friends who are on the devices that you support who don't play this game. Pretty powerful invite sending experience. It's those kind of optimizations that separate super successful games from pretty successful games. Next thing is something we see again and again and again. And it's such a simple thing, but it makes a huge difference. How many times have you started a game and within minutes it's asked you to invite your friends to play this game? But I haven't even played the game yet. What am I, like, I haven't even, you don't invite your friends to a club when you've never been to the club. Like, you need to do this at the right time. So it's all about finding the right invite experience, thinking about the game's life cycle. So guess what? You shouldn't really be asking people to invite their friends early on in your life cycle. The best place to do this is when they're super engaged. It's when they're enthusiastic, totally devoted to your app and game. Next, I want to talk about sending gifts. This is pretty similar to sending invites, but with a twist. Invites is just about, hey, come and play this game. Gifting is about invites with value. So this is something else Diamond Dash does really well, right? I'm actually going to send a life to a friend. So I can pick the friends I want to send this life to. There's the request dialog again. And guess what? On the receiving end, they're going to get a push notification and end up re-engaged. Push notification, and then you show them an experience that shows that you received the life from that sending user. And guess what? You've actually offered them a prompt to send the life back. Another excellent re-engagement channel. So why would you use this, right? Why would you use this if you're talking about re-engaging existing users when, say, you're only on iOS and Android? You could use push notifications for that, right? Well, of course you could. But there's a couple of benefits of using this. Firstly, it works cross-platform, and we'll talk about that in a minute, having your game on the web as well. But it also works with users who haven't installed your app. We're told by developers that because gifting has intrinsic value, users feel better about sending gifts than they do about sending invites. So it's a great way to engage new users. Next, I want to talk about leaderboards and tournaments. And this is something I think we see a ton of developers use, and something we can help with a lot better. Think about a leaderboard. When was the last time you played a game and discovered that you were the 700,000th worst person at this game? Maybe I'm just not the right kind of player. But that's not a particularly galvanizing thing to find out, right? Well done, you're not very good. And you have this huge ladder to climb ahead of you. Welcome, have a good day. Not very cool. A much, much better experience is social leaderboards. Turns out that rather than finding out the one next person I need to beat is some random dude in Guatemala, I do actually want to beat the person I shared a dorm with at uni. I do actually want to beat my boss at these games. So having a social leaderboard is extremely engaging. Turns out I'm still pretty rubbish at this game, right? But at least I know I can beat Ian, and it's not that far to beating Chad, Namita, and Craig. So social leaderboards are extremely engaging things. I feel like I can finally win. But they're difficult to build. To build a social leaderboard, first, you need to download the social graph from Facebook. Number two, you need to keep it up to date regularly so that it's updated. And third, then you need to do potentially an expensive join on all of these scores against this data. Turns out there's a service that's pretty good at doing that, and that's Facebook. So we have an API, and the API is called the Scores API. And I love the Scores API. It's so simple, but it's extremely powerful. All you do is publish integers. You publish an integer. Simon scored 33,925. But we can do a ton of things with that data. The first thing we can do is we know if you've beaten your own previous high score. So we can automatically generate stories that say Simon beat his high score. Second thing is we know whether or not that score is now higher than one of your friends. So we can generate passing stories, just like the Diamond Dash example, Simon beat Gareth. And it also means we can generate social leaderboards inside Facebook itself. And we provide an API. So this social leaderboard in Bubble Witch Saga was generated just by a get on our Scores API. Now, we wouldn't necessarily recommend using Facebook as the total all-time canonical store for this data, but it's a super lightweight way, minutes of code, to generate awesome social leaderboards. A twist on leaderboards is the same thing every week. So if a social leaderboard is engaging, right? I know I can beat my friends, maybe if that is reset every week and I have another chance to beat them from scratch, then I'm going to come back to the game regularly. So again, something Diamond Dash does brilliantly, they have a weekly tournament. And the way they implement this is they have a cron job, which once a week sends a delete to our API, and everything's reset again. Very simple mechanic, extremely engaging. And another thing Diamond Dash does well is they use these tournaments and these passing moments as opportunities to brag. So they now help me publish entering tournament stories when I first play in the tournament, and they publish stories when I win a medal in Diamond Dash. That was a very good day for me. So we talked about bragging, inviting, gifting, challenging, leaderboards, tournaments, and more. The point is you can build all these experiences with these 4 things in various ways. And these scenarios are not specific to games. They're general to many types of apps. So the last thing I want to talk about is cross-platform. And this is something that is extremely powerful and something Facebook is great at helping with. Let's look at some examples. So back again, top 11, being a soccer manager. These guys launched on iOS in November 2011, and they made it to the top of the iOS App Store pretty quickly, and they've been kind of there ever since. Another example, Slotomania, slot machine game. These guys launched on Android in February 2012, and guess what? They ended up at the top of Google Play, and they've kind of stayed there ever since. And finally, Candy Crush Saga. Candy Crush Saga launched only fairly recently, back in November 2012, and guess what? They ended up at the top of the iOS App Store, and I think they're either number 1 or number 2 today. So these games are all very different types of games. They're very different mechanics, and they launched at very different times. What do they have in common? They all started on Facebook.com. So one of the things we're finding is games that were previously successful on Facebook.com being enabled for mobile and then driving straight to the top of the charts. And this meme, like this metaphor, is so powerful, we're starting to see mobile developers go back and build stuff for Facebook.com as well. And if you think about why, it makes perfect sense. The first thing is that we don't all have the same devices. Some people have different types of devices from different manufacturers. But the other thing is that we use these devices at different types of the day, right? My computer I might use in the lunch break at work. My phone I might use when I'm on the train or waiting for a bus. And my iPad, I might use that when I'm lounging on the sofa at home. So by building the same game on multiple platforms, not only you're expanding your reach of devices, you're expanding the times of day, the touch points of the day that people can play your game. And with games that are social, you want to play with your friends regardless of platform and regardless of time of day. And as Doug said, Facebook is a great piece of glue to join these experiences together because we provide a consistent social graph and identity on many of these platforms. So you might think, well, I'm a mobile developer. Why would I want to go back and potentially build something for Facebook.com for the web? Well, for a couple of reasons. The first thing is, because it's the web, it's one of the fastest platforms you can iterate on. You can release multiple times a day. So we're finding game developers test new mechanics on the Facebook.com versions of their games before they roll them out to iOS and Android because they can tune them. And the second thing is, it's still a platform we're focused on. In the last year, the number of Canvas installs grew 75%. And Canvas game developers make money. In the last year, we paid out $2 billion to game developers building on Canvas. So if you're an app developer, building cross-platform is something extremely powerful. The web, iOS, and Android connected together. So we talked about discovery, how Facebook is changing ourselves, changing our surface to make games and apps in general more discoverable. We talked about engagement, how you can build social mechanics into your apps and games to help tell their story on timeline. And we talked about cross-platform. We also wanted to make it easy. So a couple of weeks ago, we launched a Game Developer Center, which has tutorials and documentation and case studies and examples and code samples for everything I've just talked about. And so we're going to spend the rest of today with you guys, helping you understand how to be successful no matter what type of app you're building on Facebook. Thanks very much. So we are actually running a little bit ahead of time. Lunch is going to be served at 12 o'clock, but we've announced a bunch of stuff today. We've announced a new native share dialog, a new native login dialog. We've built the Object API and the Object Browser, and we're launching a new iOS SDK today as well. So with this spare time, I thought it'd be useful for us to invite Doug, Rose, and Eddie back up on stage so you guys have a chance to ask some questions about what we've announced today. So please welcome Doug, Eddie, and Rose back on stage again.